Hello everyone, welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I am Big Italy 42, joined here by Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL on Twitter. And we've got two slates today, an early slate and a late slate. We're talking about the late slate tonight. We've got 8 games starting at 7:10 p.m. And we were talking for the show, not a ton of great options as far as pitchers today, but the good options that are there are really good options though. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable up there at the top. Once we venture down below, it's pretty murky waters there as far as pitching goes.
Yeah, the top pitcher tonight, obviously, is Felix Hernandez. Even though he's on the road at Texas, feel pretty good about his prospects, as you do most nights he takes the mound. But on top of that, like you said, there's really not much going on in the mid-range. There's not much to pivot off of him in terms of cash games. So I think you can go with him, and I mean, as we've been saying the past few days, FanDuel's pricing's pretty soft when it comes to hitters. So I think he can work in Felix at 11.1K and build a pretty comfortable lineup around him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And just to further the fact that he makes for a great play, as does the second guy that I'm going to mention here in a second, the two worst offenses in the league against right-handed pitching, and we're talking historically bad. The Texas Rangers, a 261 team WOBA, a team .093 ISO, so no power either. And the only team worse than them is the Philadelphia Phillies, who are now matched up tonight with Carlos Martinez, who has been pitching really well. Mowed down Milwaukee last time out, had a great game against the Reds, another good game against the Reds before that. So if for some reason you can't afford Felix Hernandez, which I find that very hard to believe because he's really easy to fit tonight with the soft pricing you mentioned. But Carlos Martinez makes for a fine swerve there. He's a -200 favorite. He is at home against that terrible Phillies offense. So, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either guy, but I'm still going with the better pitcher in Felix Hernandez because I don't think there's any concern with getting hitters in your lineup with him.
Yeah, I'll pretty much have 100% with Felix in cash games. I don't think that's really much of an issue. But as far as tournaments go, if you're working in some stacks, they can sometimes get pretty pricey and you can't quite fit Felix in. I think Martinez is pretty serviceable in that spot, especially against this watered-down Phillies lineup that's been pretty cold lately.
Yeah, I mean, that lineup is just, I mean, it's awful, it's embarrassing, and it's a pretty key thing now in cash games. You target bad offenses, and when you can target a bad offense with a good pitcher, just like Felix Hernandez last time, it just makes too much sense. So, I mean, don't overthink this one. There's a couple of pitchers in great spots. Just go ahead and get yourself Felix Hernandez and just move on because there's no reason to overthink it.
Yep.
Elsewhere in tournaments, I'm going to throw out a crazy guy for you here. I'm going to throw him in some low-stakes GPPs. You mentioned before the podcast to me that Vegas hates him, but I like some of his numbers. And obviously this is strictly GPP only. If you play him in a cash game, that is on you. And I will criticize you for that. But Jordan Lyles, $6,300. Hear me out before you start throwing things at your own computer. Notice you can't actually hit me. But Jordan Lyles has an 11% walk rate, which I do not like. I don't like his 14% strikeout rate. But what I do like is a 52.8% ground ball rate. 0 home runs allowed in the season. 207 WOBA allowed to right-handers. A righty-dominant lineup here in Chase Field with the Diamondbacks. Everyone will be on these Arizona bats once again, and I don't blame them. But Jordan Lyles has pitched 12 2/3 innings at Coors Field this year and has given up 2 extra base hits, both doubles, no home runs. So, yes, he's allowing contact, and yes, he's allowing too many base runners, but at a 7.2% walk rate against righties, the Diamondbacks aren't exactly a patient team. They're not exactly tearing the cover off the ball, right around league average at 303 team WOBA. So, in tournaments, I'm going after it. I'm taking my chance against the team a lot of people are going to be stacking with the pitcher that's going to fly under the radar tonight.
Yeah, and here's the thing with him. I mean, you really don't need him to do a whole lot. 6 innings, maybe 5 strikeouts, and the outside chance of a win. I mean, that's going to be fine for tournaments at his price point. And then another narrative for tournaments there is because everyone will be on the Arizona bats if they follow Vegas. Arizona is the highest projected scoring team. So, I mean, if you have Lyles and he shuts down Arizona, then, I mean, you're way ahead of the pack in that regard.
Yeah, and I like his chances to even get the win here because Josh Carpenter has been awful against lefties. 369 to WOBA allowed so far. 9.8% strikeout rate means that they're putting the ball in play. And I don't know if you heard of some of these Colorado lefties, but there's a couple guys in that lineup that are pretty damn good against righties. So I like their chances to score some runs, and I think that Colorado is going to be my preferred stack in that game, going a little bit against the grain here. Anybody else you're looking at for tournaments?
Man, that's really it. That's pretty much. I guess you could kind of build up some rationale for Garrett Cole. He has a really good ground ball rate to begin the season. He's been very impressive lately. And I mean, I don't really mind him at a free swinging Cubs team.
Yeah.
That could strike out a bunch. I mean, the Cubs lineup is good, but I don't know if they're as good as everyone's kind of been thinking lately. So I don't really mind Cole. I think he's going to have a low ownership percentage for 15 fantasy point, 17 fantasy point upside.
Yeah, I think that Cubs lineup is the whole thing that you get from your principal in high school when you get in trouble is the potential word. They think you have so much potential to be great. You're not great yet, but one day. So that's where I'm thinking about the Cubs too. I mean, you mentioned his ground ball rate, 62% on the season, almost a 27% strikeout rate. Like you said, Cubs strike out a lot, in the top third of the league. So I mean, I think he makes for a great spot.
And the wind's blowing in at Wrigley, 12 miles per hour. So
yeah, ground ball pitcher, wind blowing in, strikeout pitcher. I mean, he got a lot of factors going in. He's going to be low owned again because I know some people were on Jeff Locke. I had him in a couple tournaments yesterday as a flyer, but he's not nearly as good of a pitcher as Garrett Cole either. So I think a lot of people will be off him as well. So yeah, that's going to about do it for me. I mean, it's a couple guys in great spots. No reason to overthink this here tonight. All right, moving over to catcher here where anytime Stephen Vogt is facing a righty, I'm going to be playing Stephen Vogt against a righty. And at $3,100, he's the second most expensive guy on the board, but Buster Posey's going against Zach Greinke. And yes, he homered off Clayton Kershaw last night, but at the same time, I mean, there's really no reason in my mind to pay up for a guy against a worse pitcher when you can get Stephen Vogt against, I guess, a slightly above average righty. And Vogt's been swinging a much hotter bat than Buster Posey has too.
Yeah, really don't hate the Stephen Vogt call, but I will likely steer down. Looking at 2.4K for Yasmani Grandal against Ryan Vogelsson. And I mean, if you look at these splits, Vogelsson, when you factor in sample size and everything, I mean, he's bottom 5 of active or probable pitchers today in his split against lefties. We have a 335 split WOBA over the past 3 seasons. And Yasmani Grandal, nice lineup spot, batting 5th. Got the night off last night. Should be refreshed, ready to go. I really like him, and he's near minimum salary, so I'll probably have him in majority of cash games.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, we talked before the show. Dodgers are a stack that both you and I both like tonight. You mentioned Vogelsong struggles against lefties. He has already allowed 3 homers to lefties already this season, and a 12% walk rate says that there's going to be guys on base as well. Not a whole hell of a lot going in his favor tonight. Plus, saw some of these big bats for the Dodgers get the night off last night. Maybe in anticipation of the pounding they're going to put on Ryan Vogelsong tonight. But, yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I think that's a great price for him. And if, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cheap guys here. So I like that call as well. AJ Pierzynski is just somehow hot as hell right now at 2,600. Facing off against Jordan Zimmerman tonight, who been much worse against lefties than righties so far this year. Not keeping the ball on the ground at all. So, I mean, I don't mind him at 2,600. But I'm with you there. If Grandal can get in like that 5 spot in the order, then I think he's in a great spot against Vogelsong tonight.
Yeah, a couple more guys I'm going to throw at you. Probably like them more as tournament plays. Nick Hundley for Colorado. We said that game should have plenty of runs. Hundley, I mean, he has like a 7-game hitting streak. I mean, he's been doing pretty well. And the Rockies are going to get on base. Another guy, I guess if you're kind of a masochist, Mike Zunino at minimum salary. He's against a lefty once again. I mean, one of these days he's going to pay off. He's been pretty horrible lately with a bunch of offers, but I mean, he's going to have a low ownership percentage. Got the righty-lefty matchup, minimum salary, maybe for a tournament. Yeah,
and I mean, fortunately, he's really cheap, and strikeouts count the same as any other out on FanDuel here, so you really don't care if he's striking out or if he's grounding out. I mean, an out's an out. He does possess that big-time upside, so I like that call at min salary. And obviously, you know, a lot of guys you can fit in. Most of these, there's so many options at catcher and a lot of spots really at around that price. So you can really go, if you're bargain hunting, you don't want to play Grandal, just look and see who's got the best lineup spot around those cheap guys, because there's just a ton of value to be had once again here. All right, moving on to first base, where if you're not going with my crazy Jordan Lyles pick, you can certainly play Paul Goldschmidt, who is the one hitter you are always going to have the most confidence against, and against an average pitcher. He's in a great spot at 4,800. Still not that hard to fit in with Felix Hernandez. You can easily get at least one big bat with him. Adrian Gonzalez, though, is probably going to be the guy that I'm targeting more at 4,400 against Vogelsong. Already mentioned, struggles against lefties, giving up too many home runs. Adrian Gonzalez got to take an extra nap yesterday. Maybe he's well rested. So I'm a big fan of Adrian Gonzalez, and I will have, if I'm paying up at first base, that's the way that I'm going tonight.
Yeah, I made an early FanDuel lineup, or a preliminary FanDuel lineup, and Adrian Gonzalez and Grandal are both on them. So I like him there. I think he's a better pick than Goldschmidt. Dollar for dollar wise, he's $400 less. Certainly don't hate Goldschmidt either. But yeah, I agree with you.
All right. And I mean, a couple other guys, as there always is. There's a ton of options at first base. You've got Justin Morneau. Josh Collminter struggles with lefties. Already kind of mentioned that. I mean, the guy's positive points every day. He actually has 3, 2, 3, and 2 hits in his last 4 games. He's the guy for the Rockies that always seems to fly under the radar. Everyone's on Dickerson and Tulowitzki and even Blackman, and they get the cheap catcher, McHenry, Hundley, whoever it may be. And it seems like Morneau's the one guy who kind of flies under the radar. But at $3,400 tonight, Chase Field, guy who struggles with lefties, a lot of good things going in his favor too.
Yeah, I mean, you have to love that park factor too. Better than most of these other first basemen down in that range. So yeah, on my list I had Goldschmidt, Gonzalez, Morneau, and one more I'm going to throw at you is Matt Adams at 2.7K. If you're looking for a cheaper option that you need in there. Harang is pitching for Philadelphia tonight. He's pretty much a fly ball pitcher that, I mean, Adams could get a hold of one, could do some damage. So I really don't hate that spot. Batting cleanup for the Cardinals.
Yeah, and I think some people may overreact to the early numbers with Aaron Harang, but this is not a guy who is this good of a pitcher. He's pitching well above his skill level right now. Had a couple good seasons, I mean, 6-7 years ago in Cincinnati, but I mean, this guy, he's an average pitcher right now, and the Cardinals can certainly put a hurting on him.
He's just hitting his prime right now.
Yeah, what is he, 36?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I hit my prime at 36. I'm not too far off from that, but if my prime's at 36, I guess that's not too bad. I'll go ahead and I'll go buy myself a sports car on my 36th birthday. You inspired me.
No, people call that a midlife crisis.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, also let me borrow some money for that sports car.
There you go.
All right, moving on here to second base. I love playing this guy at the top of the order against any pitcher because he steals bases, he gets on. Got 2 hits again last night. Didn't steal a base, which really just irritated me. I mean, how embarrassing for him not to steal a base last night. He didn't even try. D. Gordon, you got to try. I mean, Bartolo Colon has one of the slowest deliveries in the history of mankind. So I guarantee you,
everything.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is probably starting his walk out to the mound right now because he's running out of time to get out there by 7 o'clock. So D. Gordon, $3,400, way too cheap. He'll probably be my cash game second baseman again tonight.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's who I had at the top of my list. Looking down a little bit, Colton Wong, never mind him for tournaments. He has that home run upside, which is kind of strange. It's not really reflected in the splits over the past few seasons. But, I mean, just from looking at him last year and this year, he can hit a home run. He can pile up RBIs. And like we said, regression is on the way for Harang. So don't hate that as a tournament pick. Otherwise, looking down, minimum salary if you want to punt the position, Ricky Weeks against lefty Rodriguez tonight. I think he was batting 6th yesterday, which isn't a great lineup spot considering sometimes he bats leadoff against lefties. But, I mean, if you're not going D. Gordon, I would rather punt with Ricky Weeks and then, you know, spend on your outfield position.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that call. Ricky Weeks against the lefty. Minimum salary. I mean, he's the platoon guy you mentioned. Even if he is hitting 6, that's not ideal, but we have seen him up there first. I think he batted second even maybe once or twice this year against a lefty, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, I mean, at that salary and this matchup against Wandy Rodriguez, the epitome of average, I love him in this spot tonight. So if you're saving a second base, I mean, that's the obvious way to go, I think. All right, moving on to third base, where Matt Carpenter, once again the most expensive, wants to get a great cash game play. Had himself a hell of a game once again last night. I mean, the guy just gets it done. He gets multiple hits seemingly every night. 5 of his last 6 games, 6 of his last 10, at least 2 hits. I mean, the guy scores runs. He just does it all. One of the more complete players in the league. But in my cash games, if I'm paying for D. Gordon and probably Adrian Gonzalez and Felix Hernandez as well, it's going to be tough to fit him in as well. So you're going to need to get some value here. And there's not a whole lot that I like, to be honest with you, here down cheap. You've got Martin Prado's been hitting the ball decent. You got him against Cologne tonight at 2,700, hitting ahead of Stanton. Not an awesome play, but if you're going cheap, I don't mind him. Who are you looking at here on the cheap end?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just going to be basically fill out your lineup, come back to third base, and see who fits, see what you can work in. Of those guys on my list, I have Josh Harrison, Martin Prado, and Juan Uribe, maybe, if you need a little more salary cap relief. I don't love any of them, but I mean, like I said, it's just, kind of mixing, matching, seeing who fits in that spot.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go tonight at third base. See who you can get in a nice lineup spot, see who's discounted, see who gets a bump up if a guy gets a day off, something like that. That's another one of those, just wait for lineups, and it's a bad position, really, if you're not paying up, I think. So
Yep.
If you can't get Matt Carpenter, I mean, you could go Chris Bryant if you wanted, but I mean, he's not as much of a cash game for me right now in that matchup against Garrett Cole. Pretty tough.
Yeah, he's way too expensive for I would consider a subpar matchup against Cole.
Yeah, completely agree there. Moving on to shortstop, which is generally a pretty awful position in itself. You've got Marcus Semien at $2,800, been batting up near the top of the order. I like him at $2,800. I don't love him. It's not an awesome matchup against Matt Shoemaker, but he has got hit around a couple times this year. So if he's up there in the 1 or 2 hole again at $2,800, it's going to be hard for me to pass up. But if it's not him for me, it's going to be Johnny Peralta at $2,700. Been batting right around 5th most nights. Batted 2nd one day, but that was because Matt Holliday got the day off. I mean, I'm probably just going to be going with the chalk here. Maybe if you see Andrelton Simmons up there once again in the 2 hole. I'm not much of a believer in Jordan Zimmerman, so I don't mind him at $2,400.
Yeah. Someone else I'm looking at in the same range, actually the same exact price as Peralta, is Jimmy Rollins. I mean, he really hasn't been that great lately, but you got to love the matchup. You got to love the lineup security batting leadoff there against Vogelsung, and you got guys like Adrian Gonzalez batting behind him. So I really don't hate that spot at a position where I'm not really too enthusiastic about anyone else. One more name I'm going to throw out is Chris Owings. If he has another great lineup spot, he was batting 2nd last night. He's not a great player on the surface, but favorable situation, hitter-friendly park. You got Paul Goldschmidt behind him. I really don't hate that call for 2.4K.
Yeah, I like that. And with Jimmy Rollins, I mean, I know as of the beginning of this week, he was leading I believe it was all shortstops in walks. He had a really high walk rate, which was really nice, and that's about the only thing he's been good at so far this year. And Ryan Vogelsong, behind Wandy Rodriguez, who only has 1 start with the highest walk rate of any pitcher on the board tonight. So maybe he just sits up there, maybe just closes his eyes and waits for 6 pitches. Hopefully 4 of them are outside the zone. He can just wait for Adrian Gonzalez to bring him home with that first inning home run today.
Yeah, it's not a bad strategy, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would be doing if I'm Jimmy Rollins right now, because he's not hitting the ball particularly well.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the outfield, where if you want to pay up, I mean, Mike Trout, still the best hitter in the game, but $5,400, I will not be paying for him tonight outside of some tournaments. I mean, he's the guy who, I mean, he doesn't have any multi-hit games in his last 10, which, I mean, I'm not saying I'm concerned about Mike Trout because he's walking he's walking a ton right now, but $5,400, I mean, no way he makes it into my cash game lineup. It's not a bad matchup against Jesse Hahn, but, I mean, just that price is really tough. Nelson Cruz, he's always in play against a lefty. I'm terrified to not have him in my cash game lineup tonight against a bad lefty. I'm going to try to make that happen. We'll see what kind of value we can come up with, but if you can pay up, I mean, Cruz has got to be the guy you pay for, right?
Yeah, I have him locked into my early cash game lineup right now. Yeah, him against Rodriguez tonight, subpar lefty, like you said, hitter-friendly park. Really like that. Otherwise, looking down, you can look towards his teammate to help fit him in there. Austin Jackson's at 2.3K. Likely batting a leadoff again against a lefty. Has some speed there. I mean, he hasn't been good lately. He's over 10 in his last 3 games. But, I mean, he's near minimum salary. Great lineup spot against the subpar pitcher. I mean, that's all you can really ask for, especially in a shorter slate like tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he steals bases, he scores runs, he's decent at getting on base at least. I mean, big bats behind him. A lot of factors in his favor. All these outfielder lefties for Colorado in play. Charlie Blackmon's got a nice price at $3,700. Dickerson you got to pay for at $46. But I mean, if you're paying up, I won't blame you for going that route. Cole Calhoun, we know, has got some upside. He's $3,400. Positive points in 9 of his last 10. So I mean, he's not a bad play. 2 3-hit games in his last 3. I mean, he's got a lot going for him as well. Even Carlos Gonzalez down there, $3,200, nice and cheap if you want some cheap exposure to Chase Field there. I don't mind him.
Wait, how much is Cargo?
32.
That's not bad.
Still right. He's been hovering right around that price for a couple games now, and yeah, I don't mind it. Nick Markakis is a guy who's a nice cash game play at the top of that order if you are not playing Jordan Zimmerman, which I will not be. He's $2,900. Got on base a couple times, 3 times last night. I mean, you're obviously not expecting Atlanta to score 75 runs again like they did last night. But, I mean, if you get him batting leadoff once again, we know what he did when he played for the Orioles. He was a great cash game play when he was cheap there. Some bats behind him, so I don't mind him. But just not a lot of faith in the bats behind him outside of Freddie Freeman.
Right. A couple more outfielders I'm going to throw at you. Jason Hayward at 2.8K against Terang. We know he's been battling a hamstring/groin injury. But he looked okay yesterday. He went 1 for 2, had 3 walks, scored 2 runs. I mean, not really bad. He looked decent. He looked more comfortable up there at the plate. So I really don't hate that call, even if he's batting in the bottom half of the order like they've been putting him the past few games, just to get him back on track. Still 2.8K, nice price compared to his talent level in the matchup. One more guy, David Peralta. Again, I mean, he was very good last night. Hit a home run, had a double, 2 RBIs, 2 runs. Stepping in against Jordan Lyles in Vegas, like we said, really loves the D-backs today. Highest projected scoring team. He'll likely be batting cleanup for near minimum salary for the highest projected scoring team. So, I mean, you got to take your shots. And, I mean, if you want Felix, if you want Adrian Gonzalez, I don't see how you can leave David Peralta out of your lineup for near minimum salary if you're trying to work in all those guys plus Nelson Cruz. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll have him. Yeah.
He was a guy I had in my cash game lineups last night. He was like a low-risk, high-reward type of guy. Yep. And, I mean, I obviously don't expect a home run again, but I mean, if he gets on base, scores a couple runs, I mean, you don't need much at all to pay out that salary. So, big fan there. And Andre Ethier, if he's back in the 2-hole against a righty, $2,500. I mean, you can't really go wrong there. We already talked about the Dodgers. So.
Do you think he's going to bat second, though? Because I think he got bumped up because you had Grandal out, you had Gonzalez out.
I thought it was a lot because Puig was out. I don't know the actual official reasoning for it, but I would be batting him second.
See, that's why I'm skeptical. Yeah. Because I don't know, but yeah, look for the lineups, and I really don't mind him for 2.5K either. I actually had him on my list here. So.
All right, well, that's gonna wrap things up. Thanks for hanging out with us. Check us out on Twitter at DF Cafe. Lots of great content for tonight's slate at dailyfantasycafe.com, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.